say yes to be respectful of everybody's time. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know others will be here because they texted me, but that's why we record these things, and it's on the back end for you to listen to when you have the opportunity. So tonight I'm going to have 3 different topics with some examples, and we'll spend a little bit of time on each one. And then I would encourage you, if you've got questions about your business or what you're doing or how we can help you, to make sure you start thinking about those. You can put them in the chat at any time, or you can raise your hand when we're done and we'll call on you and we can talk about it as a group. Again, that's something that brings value to the community because we all get to hear kind of what the issue is, and then we can answer it live so people can learn from, whatever it is you're working through. There's a lot of value in that. So, all right. So the topic, I always make fun of Rod because he lists these out. The topic was reframe the question. Reframe the question. And what's interesting is I had a potential client meeting today, and these people it's an indoor golf facility. So you hit the golf ball against the screen, it's all computerized. They got a bar and restaurant, all that good stuff. And, I didn't have a lot of context on what his needs were. And as I was talking to him, telling a little bit about myself, I thought, this conversation would go a lot better if I asked him what he felt I could bring value for him, which ways I can bring value to him, instead of me just talking about myself or all the things that I could do for him without asking that, right? He might say, hey, I heard you do marketing, what can you do for me? And I might list off 40 ways that I could help him with his golf side of the business. But really what he needed was help in the events, the bar, and the food and beverage, which I happen to have a lot more experience in than the virtual golf business, right? So, when somebody is reaching out to you or asking about your services, sometimes you can reframe that question in a way that you can get a little bit more specific and bring more value to the conversation instead of rambling on about what you think they should know or what you think they need to hear. Instead, you might want to reframe that. A lot of times when people are talking in business, and I had to do this a couple of times this last week over the cell phone while we were traveling, is what I think I hear you asking me. Matter of fact, Anthony, I did this to you earlier today. You asked a few things. I said, what I think you're asking me is this, and I repeated it, right? In a way that we both could understand the request, and I was able to deliver to him exactly what he was looking for, okay? So now as I look at some of the people on the call tonight, Alex, you're coming to mind because, you're out there potentially looking for sponsors, right? You might want to make sure that you're conversing with them in a way that you're delivering the answers that they're looking for instead of just kind of throwing stuff out there to them, right? So also an important component of reframing the question is it allows for different perspectives on that question, or for the group mentality to kind of look at it in different ways. And so oftentimes you could ask a question one way and they don't know what you're talking about, but if you reframe it, then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh yeah, I totally get that. So don't get stuck in a certain way of saying things to people or asking things. Don't be afraid to reframe the question, right? Jocelyn's talking about how you learn this in a coaching class, of course, right? And this goes back to the soft skills. And again, that's where these topics come from, is the importance of soft skills in business and adding that component to how you conduct your business. So there you go. Rod, do you want to weigh in on that briefly before I switch topics?
Yeah, I'll jump in. When I put that topic out there, and keep in mind that was probably 6 months ago, when we had this list, and I had 2 things in my mind, and the first one was exactly what you hit on, was reframing the question. But it brings to mind too that a lot of people don't know what questions to ask. We ask you all the time, if you've got questions, bring them. And I don't think it's that you don't have questions. You just don't know how to ask what you're looking for. And so reframing that question is imperative, I think, to get to the heart of an issue. What is it you're struggling with? Let's reframe it. If you don't know what question it is, well, what is the biggest challenge you had last week? What's the biggest obstacle you're facing this week? You can do a broad question like that to reframe it, but specific questions are difficult for all of us to ask because we think, well, is it too much detail? Is it not enough? Is it too personal? So I really like the way you approached it there. It really is that active listening where you literally reframe it, repeat it, and Jocelyn's absolutely right. In coaching, with John C. Maxwell, that's really what it is. You want people to come up with their own answers, but you have to be able to get that dialogue going, that question and answer dialogue. And the second thing, when I was looking at this topic again and being refamiliarized with it, was one of the things I would approach with this, and maybe you can weigh in on this too, is I'm really big with alternative C. When you're faced with two choices, it's choice A or choice B. I've spent my entire life not accepting multiple choice questions. I'd rather have an essay test, right? I don't want A, B, C, or D. If it's A, B, C, or D, I will create alternative E, right? So really pushing the envelope to go beyond what the question is. And that's really what this to me is going beyond the question, going deep, going subsurface, and getting all those things that are outside of the question that are really as relevant as the question itself. So it really is sometimes just getting more minds on the ball, more minds on the game, from different perspectives. And that's what you said. People don't always know what to ask, but if you get different perspectives on it, sometimes the answer just, reveals itself. So, I mean, it's kind of a philosophical, esoteric way of addressing the topic, but I think it's so relevant, and that's why soft skills are so important.
Well, and oftentimes, thanks, Rod, by the way. And oftentimes you could take that topic and that question, and maybe you get a brief answer. You can look at that or analyze that brief answer and say, you know what, maybe I didn't ask the question the right way and ask it a different way, and have the ability to dive deeper into that subject matter. Again, just using Alex as an example, because he's on the call tonight. You go into a sponsor, a potential sponsor pitch. Anthony, you're looking at sponsors. Maybe you ask the broad question, like, no, we're not really interested in that. But then you have the ability to dive a little bit deeper on that question, especially as it relates to bringing somebody into a project, right? So by you asking better, deeper questions, you'll get better answers and better engagement and maybe interest, or you'll be able to sell the deal, right? If Kevin's on here tonight, he installs doors and windows. You might ask a person a question about, do they need, hey, are you interested in a new door? No. But then you might say, well, have you heard of this technology, or have you heard of this, this particular item? And then you start digging a little bit deeper, and then they get back to, hey, maybe I do need some new windows, after you pointed out the fact that I don't have the right ceiling for windy days, right? So by diving deeper and reframing those questions to ultimately get what your call to action is. What is it that you're trying to achieve through your Q&A? All right, so I'm going to move on to the next topic, something I'm really, really passionate about. And as I've mentioned before, or at least recently, I'm running a campaign for a candidate that's running for governor. So a lot of my examples are going to come from that right now. Yes, I have other clients, but this is so top of mind, especially since I just spent 5 days on the road traveling all around Montana to no man's land. The second topic I wanted to cover tonight is, and this is the question to the group: how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? And it could be the goal for your business. How bad do you want the sale? How bad do you want to be successful? How bad do you want to live the life that you're living? How bad do you want it? And this is where this question comes from. It's a live example. In Montana, we have 2 congressional races. We've got the east side, which is congressional 2, and we got the west side, which is congressional 1. And if you watch any news, a lot of times you'll see members of Congress on the news talking about, their state or their vote or what's being held up in DC and all their reasons why. Well, on the west side of the state, we have an incumbent, which means somebody that won before, they're running again. And now we have somebody running against that incumbent who ran against them the last time and lost by a landslide. But they're back. They want to run again. They want to unseat this congressperson, right? And so I like this candidate. Happens to be, a loose business colleague, and I've offered my help, our suggestions, which they've taken me up on some of those. But what's interesting is, and by the way, they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this race of their own money, maybe up to $1 million. Hard to say. We still got a few months left. So I call them on a Thursday afternoon around 4:30, and I said, "Hey, do you want to go over this stuff?" "You know what, Jim? Let's do it tomorrow. We're just leaving the office. It's 4:30. Okay, well, we've got 65 days or so. Maybe it was 70 days to the election when I was told this on a Thursday afternoon at 4:30. Okay, I know I've got a lot of hours left in the day to keep pushing, my campaign and what we're doing. And by the way, there's no Saturdays or Sundays off. So I reached back on Friday. Again, remember, I'm helping them for free, trying to offer, some value to them. I call back on Friday. They're like, "Hey, we're all out of the office today. We're just exhausted from a long week. So let's talk about it on Monday." Let's talk about it on Monday. So we took an early day on Thursday, take an all day Friday off. We're going to take the weekend off. We're going to talk about it on Monday. So this begs the question, how bad do they really want to win that election? And it forces me to look at, business owners, our entrepreneurs, our people that say, "I want to do this or that." And I always have to question, how bad do you really want that? What work are you putting in to achieve that? Because that's going to dictate your success, right? If you only have 65 days to an election and every vote matters and you got your butt stomped the first time, can you really afford to leave early on a Thursday, take Friday off and the whole weekend and get back to something, especially free supportive help from somebody that has done this a few times? Can you really afford to take that approach? And so what I want to ask everybody in this call to do and in this community to do, whether it's tonight or you're watching this later on, is I want you to write down a list of things that you're willing to do to find that success and title it, "How bad do I want it?" How bad do I want it? And it's interesting because when I ask myself that question, I look at my habits and some of my traits. I mean, the easy one is, first year, everybody wants to go on a diet and they want to lose that 5 pounds or whatever. How bad do you really want it? We're in the month of March. I started out on a great fitness routine beginning of the year, dropped off about February 15th because I went on vacation. Doesn't mean I don't want to be healthy, but I haven't jumped back on that routine yet. So how bad do I really want to be healthy? How bad do I need that health? How bad do I really want to change my habits? Right. And in that area of my life, I know I'm falling short. So I have to really ask myself, is it something that's a priority for me? Well, right now, maybe not. Right. So look at your own things in your life and the importance of those things and list out how bad you really want it. I start thinking back when I was competitive Spartan racing, both Samantha and I, she's on the call tonight, we really, really wanted to win. I mean, there was no question in our mind that we wanted to win every event that we signed up for. And we did all the work to do that. That meant up at 4:30, dragging the kids out of the house, taking them to the gym, letting them sit. It was a little private gym, so don't think I was leaving them alone, but they were sitting in the lobby, while we were getting our workouts in. We'd come home, we'd go put the miles in out on the streets to get our running in, so working out, running, all the things, proper diet. I mean, we wanted it bad. And we built our lives around how bad we wanted it. 70 miles a week, that's a full-time job, by the way. That's like almost, 30 hours of running if you're going to run 70 hours a week. So, these things take effort and energy to do based on how bad you really want it. I'm going to read a quick quote from Alan Stein. He was on my podcast probably a couple years ago now. And he wrote a wonderful book. So the quote was, "High achievers are at the top of their game because of the discipline that they have in the unseen hours." The unseen hours. And when I think about wanting something really bad, those are the hours that you're going to win. Those are the hours that you're able to put in when you really want something. The unseen hours, not the 9 to 5. It's that 4:30 in the afternoon to midnights, I've talked about building out the business plan for my tequila company. I had a full-time 70-hour a week job. And so at 9 o'clock every night, I started writing my business plan. Ultimately, that plan, I was able to raise $12 million. But those unseen hours for 6 months are what got me that. So please, as homework, write down how bad you really want whatever that is that you're wanting and list out how you're going to get that. Okay. And if you're not sure what those steps should look like, that's when you reach out to us and say, hey, I'm stuck. This is what I really want. I've got a couple good ideas, but what more can I do to achieve this? Okay. And then we'll start digging in. What does your calendar look like? How much time are you spending towards this? Do we need to rewrite this thing? Do we need to reprioritize this other thing? How bad do you really want it? Rod, how about weighing in on that before I move into the third topic?
Holy smokes. How bad do you want? This reminds me in network marketing, when I first brushed up against it as a professional, there was one of my mentors said, basically in a different way, he said, is there enough evidence if you were brought into court, and saying, yeah, I'm a distributor for this particular product, is there enough evidence to convict you? Would there be enough evidence if an outsider looked in and they looked at you and your time, if they looked at your calendar, your schedule, and your production, would there be enough evidence to convict you as an author, as an entrepreneur, as a successful CEO or CFO? Is there enough evidence to convict you? Because I know there are successful CEOs out there and CFOs out there that I don't think I could find enough evidence to convict them even now. Even if they're on salary and getting millions of dollars a year and bonuses and stock options, there's not enough evidence to convict them of actually doing their job. So make sure that you're doing enough to at least tip the scales and saying, yes, I'm moving forward. I'm not stagnant. I'm not sloughing off. I am moving forward. Your pace may slow. You may have injuries. You may have family emergencies. You may have all kinds of different crises can come up, but there has to be forward progress daily. And I mean, even on a weekend, when you're taking the weekend off, you better at least be, if you're not thinking about it, you better be praying about it. Okay. You want to take the time off and say, I'm not doing anything, at least pray about it. At least get your mindset, meditate about it. Give yourself 10 minutes to clear the space and say, I'm focusing 10 minutes of energy on what I want to accomplish next week. And then also, I think important in this, look at that evidence, build your own evidence binder. Your calendar should be your evidence binder, right? That should be the evidence folder. So look back and say, gosh, look a year ago. And I like this. Taylor's not on the call tonight, but she posted something yesterday or today. It's the 1-year anniversary of the launch of her business, Church and State Designs. And she did an Instagram post listing all the highlights from the last year. That was an idea that started as just an idea, right? There was a need, she identified it and went through with it. And she's now got an evidence file, video files, Instagram files that she's now repurposing, recycling, and reusing to propel her business into year 2. So that evidence that you're building up is recyclable. And I'm sorry, Rachel's not on the call tonight because she would tell you the exact same thing. Build that portfolio and then reuse it, recycle it, repurpose it. So you're not constantly looking to create new material. It's going to save you time and energy, and it's going to help with your long-term branding as well. It's going to be your voice. It's going to be your personality. And that's what's going to be driving you forward. So and I like that you brought up the, Alan Stein, because it's coaching, and then with your own, competitive racing. I hate running, and I'll tell people that I've always hated. I was in the military. I've ran my share of running. I've worn out boots running, and so I just don't care for it, but I appreciate it. And gosh, Riley Kuntz, who's on the call tonight, years ago talked me into doing this fun run. It'll be fun, right? the Dirty Dash, it was called. So it was like a 5K, but it's through mud and obstacles and I mean fun stuff. And she talked me into doing it. So once I committed, it was a whole new ball game. And at the time, I had a torn rotator cuff that I later had surgery on, but I literally had duct taped my arm across my chest. I had it duct taped up. And people were asking me, is that part of your costume for this race or what? And I said, no. But I was doing obstacles with one arm, jumping over pits, climbing over walls. I did everything everyone else did with one arm taped to my chest because I was committed, because I said I would do it. And I'll never forget the evidence, the reward, the jury was in at the end of that. And my adult son, Riley's husband, looked at me and he said, Dad, I had no idea. You are a badass. That's the evidence. You need that kind of evidence in your business. You need that kind of evidence built up around what you do daily to propel your business forward. So I'm gonna stop at that.
Great response. By the way, Jocelyn, I'm looking at your point here, which is well made. I want to touch on that and just have a little bit of a left turn on the topic here. And this has nothing, this isn't a point out of you, Jocelyn, is that, you know, if you want it bad and you're spending the time doing something because you want it bad, make sure what you're doing is progressing your objective forward. Because sometimes you could be busy with busy work and you could say, oh, I'm doing 70 hours a week towards this, but it's not work that's moving your objective forward. I'm thinking back, it's made me think about my In-N-Out Burger days. I had a good friend. He was a manager of a store, and what I could get done in the 48 hours allocated, or at least suggested as a manager of the stores, it took him 70 or 80 hours a week. He was like literally always at the store. And it wasn't that he was getting the job done any better because he spent 20 plus more hours there. He was just wasting a bunch of time, you know? So it's okay to brag, you know, I'm putting all these hours in, but if it's not pointed and it's not moving you forward, then it's just that, it's just wasted time. So as you look at how bad you want it, this is kind of a way of reframing, not the question, but reframing the work that you're doing so that it's purposeful and it's with intent, and then it's going to continue to move the project forward. I also saw that reel by Taylor, and I loved it because it showed the progression of her work from a year ago to where it's at today, even the evolution of some of her products that she's made because she's learned and she's continuing to move something forward, because what she wants really bad is to have a successful line of handbags, concealed carry handbags, right? So always reinventing, and it shows how bad she wants it. So I wanted to reframe that a little bit because of Jocelyn's comment there, because oftentimes when we say we want it really bad, we look at that in terms of time, but it really should be an energy, and that pointed energy that you're giving towards something. Okay. Last topic for the night. So start thinking about your questions if you got any, and they can be on anything. And yes, tonight has been about reframing that question, but you know, only you know what your needs are. We can't pretend to guess what they might be. So here's the last topic. And this is live with your decisions. Live with your decisions. And if you read my book, chapter 9, in The Freedom to Say Yes, I talk about living with your decisions. And the way that I discuss that in the beginning of that chapter is surfers make better CEOs. Surfers make better CEOs. And if you haven't heard me talk about that, what that means is, or what that reference is imagine if you haven't actually been surfing yourself, you know, out at the beach, you know, out on the waves. If you haven't actually done that yourself, I'm sure you've seen it on TV or in photos, right? So as a surfer, you paddle out on the water, you get beyond where those waves are breaking at, because otherwise you'd just be in the breakwater and you'd continue to get slammed on the head with the breaking waves. You get beyond that. And once you're beyond the break of the wave, all you see in the distance is small rolling water coming your way. And then once in a while, you see what they call a set wave. And so a set wave is a grouping of typically 4 to 6 rollers that are larger than the others. They've built momentum. So then what you get is a set of bigger waves that will actually break on shore. And oftentimes those set waves is what they're called, are much larger, and that's the more attractive wave to try to catch. Now, why do I say surfers make better CEOs? Because when you're looking off in the distance, a lot like you would in business, and you see something coming and it makes it to the boardroom, and you have to make a decision. Am I going to do this or not? Now, a surfer, if he commits to taking that wave, right? So you see the roller coming, you turn around, you face the shoreline, and you start paddling like, okay, I'm going to get on this wave. I've got to equal my speed to the speed of the wave so that as it gets ready to break, I can catch it. That's how you catch a wave when you're surfing. Now, when you see the rollers in the distance, you can't exactly judge how big they are. Okay, you can have an idea from the historical data. Maybe you gathered that morning, a bunch of big waves came in during the sets, so you might have a little bit of an idea. But once you start paddling and that wave picks you up and it starts to build into the breaking zone, you're committed. There's no going back. You're either going to have the ride of your life or the ride of your day, or you're going to crash and burn. And that's a lot like a CEO. You're going to make a decision, and that decision could be either a successful one or it could be a crash and burn. Either way, you've committed to whatever the outcome is. And that's why I say surfers make better CEOs, because a lot of times people will have paralysis by analysis. They'll just sit there and watch those rollers all day long and let them go by at one after, and never get on one. Eventually, you got to get on one and make a decision. And whether you crash and burn or you have the ride of your life, you live with those consequences. Okay. If you have the ride of your life, you're probably going to end up on shore. You're going to look back. Your buddy's going to be hollering. You go, wow, that was awesome. Right. You probably paddle back out to get another one. If you crash and burn, then you're going to have to, especially while you're in the process of burning, you're going to have to swim to the surface so you don't get tumbled in the sand or in the coral. If you're out on an island or something, or you don't want to drown, right? So you have to live with that decision, and you've got to fight your way through it. Once you fight your way through it and you survive that wave, it's like, okay, what did I learn? Maybe I'm not ready for that wave. Maybe I didn't paddle fast enough. Maybe I needed to go the other direction instead. But you take those lessons and you apply them and you try again. But you have to live with those decisions. And it's okay, because once you learn, you realize, well, I don't want to do that again, right? I don't want to ride that big roller again. That was too much for me. Maybe I'll wait for another day when the waves are smaller, or maybe you just went the wrong direction. Maybe you're going to go the other direction, right? But living with your decisions and going with them is why surfers make better CEOs. Apply that to your own life. Race car driving, same deal. Every time you go out there, potentially you could die, right? You make decisions on what you're going to do that you have to live with the consequences. And it's okay. You can survive. You can build from that. You can be better from that. So don't be afraid to make decisions and move forward with them. Just deal with the consequences and don't make the same bad decisions twice. Okay, learning from your mistakes. The other part of that, and I made a note, and that was a quote that I used to say a lot. I haven't said it on here, I don't think, but it is, we need to get off our butts. And that's BUT''S. Because oftentimes we'll sit on, even come into these calls, you'll get off the call and like, wow, that all sounds really great, but I got this, or but there's not enough hours in the day, but all these buts. Okay, literally get off your butt, 2 T's, and get away from the buts or the excuses that we all make to move on. If you can do that, you're going to be better than half the community out there trying to do what you're doing. Go back to that story that I gave about that candidate. Well, we'd work harder, but we're tired. We're going to take Friday off. So let's get off our butts, ''S's, and go out and do something. And you might just surprise yourself to see what you're capable of doing. All right. I'm going to Rod, I'll come to you in a second for some comments on that. I'm going to make another little sidebar, something that just happened to me. And this is in relation to business. if you've ever had somebody do a copyright for you, like they're going to reread something and then like kind of be a copyright for editing your job. Oftentimes when we do the same thing every day over and over and over again, we can miss the most obvious things glaring in our face. So it's good, as we suggested earlier, reframe the question. Maybe you ask the same question on every sales call. You're not making any sales. Maybe the obvious is that question doesn't work, right? In my case, we built out this website for this political candidate. And if you know politics, Republicans, Democrats, liberals, there's different political affiliations. Republicans have an elephant. Well, I had somebody write in. Now, granted, this website was built 8 months ago, and prior to that, it was an existing website that got converted for the same candidate. Somebody wrote in today, said, hey, I've been through your entire website. I don't see a single thing that identifies this candidate and the party that he represents. It's the most obvious thing. But yet 8 months of not only me working on it, a team of people working on it, some of the best in the business working on it, not to mention the thousands of followers that have visited the website. Not a single person noticed that it didn't have a political affiliation on the page. Not a single elephant or a single thing that said Republican on it, right? The most obvious. So oftentimes reframing the question, re-looking at something, taking a different perspective on something, you'll have that aha moment, go, wow, how did I miss that? How did I miss that? So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to relook at things. Have other people look, because you might be missing the obvious all day for 8 months or more. So anyways, Rod, you want to weigh in on getting off our butts and living with our decisions?
Sure. Yeah, I'll play with that one. Getting off your butts. You would think that you wouldn't even have to tell that to entrepreneurs. You would think you wouldn't even have to tell that to somebody who clocked in at work. It's time to get off your butt. If you've clocked in, you should be working, right? You should have the gloves on, the work boots on. And yet, we all fall into a rhythm sometime. We can fall into that rut, but we have to do this. We have to recognize that we're in it, or that we're not doing what we should be doing, that we're not working to our potential. If we can recognize it, we can get out of it quicker, because you're not going to be on 100% of the time. I wish I could say that I was and I am, and it's just not true. But you can be on more than you can be off. And I've said this over and over, probably not on here, but I will tell you the difference between a C student and a B student, or a B student and an A student, or an A student and the valedictorian is not very much. It's a little extra. Just a little extra makes a huge difference. And it's that way in life. It's that way in your business too. So don't do the excuses. In my book, Warpath Alliance, right? It's the A is for accountable. The second A in Warpath is for being accountable. And you have to be accountable to yourself. And that means you have to be honest with yourself and hold yourself to the same standard you would hold an employee to. You hired yourself to do this job. Are you performing it or not? Are you doing what you would expect if you paid somebody good wages? If someone was paying you $250, $500 an hour to consult with your business, are you doing that amount of work yourself? You better be. And that's holding yourself accountable. And the last thing I'll say is being committed. I taught all of my kids how to drive, and we started early. 10 years old. That's when my kids started. And your kids are even younger than that, Jim, because you've got a ranch and they're out there on the side by side, right? So you can start early. But the biggest thing, once they started doing town driving and highway driving, no hesitance. You make a decision, you commit to it. If that means you've got to hit the gas, push it all the way to the floor to get the merge speed up, so you can merge, and you're thinking you're going to hit it at 65, but traffic's going 75, you better hit it. I don't care. You're going across an intersection and there's just a little blip of a spot to get through, then hit the gas and go. But don't get out there and stop and hesitate and stop and hesitate. Like I always say, people with handicap plates or, they're just, blue haired and glasses that are as thick as pop bottles. And you don't want to get behind those people. You got to watch for them. Don't be that person. Catch the wave. Be committed and catch the wave. And especially with racing, man, when you find your line, you got to hit it. You can't let off the gas. And so get in the zone, find your line, and be committed to it. That'll help you get off your butt.
Thanks, Rod. Appreciate that. So Alex had a question in the group chat, and it was basically, I'll just restate it. What should you do if you think you're doing the right thing, putting hours in, et cetera, and then learn afterwards that it wasn't the right thing, timing, et cetera, and you put your effort in, then what, right? Alex, because you're a race guy, I'm going to give you a racing example. And this does apply to everybody. So I raced for, 13 years. We had a shop. We had multiple vehicles. We had 2 race cars. We had a trailer. We had, $100,000 plus in equipment, spare parts, plus a race car, all these things. I was talking to a friend like, hey, I'm thinking about, getting out of racing. I've got kids now. It's a lot. And the advice that he gave me applies in business all day, every day. He says, Jim, once you've made that decision, make it and move on. He goes, because race team, as an example, is like a freight train that keeps going and it's hard to slow down. And he was referring to the expenses. It's hard to slow down if you slowly do it, as opposed to cutting it off, going, okay, I'm done. I'm going to move on. So what does that look like as an example? Well, let's say I had 2 dedicated registered vehicles as part of the race team, right? Well, you're paying registration, you're paying insurance, you're paying maintenance, you're paying fuel, where you're going to store these vehicles. All these expenses keep going if you don't cut it off right away. We had a shop. Well, time to cut off the lease. Deal with the consequences, or get in the official notice so I don't have to pay extra months if we're not going to be racing. Start selling parts that you don't need. All these things, once you make a decision, cut and redirect, because you can drag it out, try to keep one toe in that door, even though you don't want to do that anymore. And that is going to drag you down. It's going to cost you more. Your indecision is going to cost you more. And a lot of fronts, not just money, but it might cost you the time to do what you really want to be doing or what you should be doing, because you identified what you were doing wasn't the right timing or the right thing. Okay, so how does this apply in business? And by the way, I see this a lot. Somebody starts a business, they put a lot of effort into it, and they're a year down the road. They're not seeing the success they want. It's not really what they thought they wanted to do. And it's like, well, now what? Well, the now what is, what do you want to do? What is it that you didn't like about that? Where is there not the fit that you were hoping for? And let's redirect immediately and build a plan around where you want to go. Let's not sit in a position of undecided, right? Let's go back, and it's a little bit more than you bargained for, Alex, but let's go back to, what are your values? What's important to you and your family or your unit or whatever that looks like, and build your goals around those values. And then that should lead into what you're doing or what that business is or where you're spending your time, your money, and your effort, right? So you can go all the way back to that, because clearly if it's not working for whatever reason, maybe it's not aligning with your values, or maybe you don't want it bad enough and you're not willing to put in the sacrifice or the sacrifices to get it. Because as we've said all along, business is hard. Being an entrepreneur is hard. The rewards are great, but you're going to have struggles, and those struggles might last years. I'm looking at my Baja wine import business. We started in late 2016. It's just now getting good. Just now, in the last couple months. And we got through COVID. I mean, that was hard. Talk about hard. Every business was shut down in the country. Every customer we had was shut down. And we had to fight through that. It was hard. And I would have probably given up had I not had investors that I felt like I wanted to deliver for them. So I had my why, and it was glaring. and it made it worth the effort to get through that. I can't say it wasn't without, some really, really hard times, but I knew it aligned with my values and I kept going. Now it's getting easier and easier and better and better. All right, let's go to Jocelyn's question. My time management sucks. I struggle daily. When I was writing, I hired a scheduler and I never even follow the schedule. It seems like life pulls me in too many different directions when I want to spend all day on my own things. Does following a set schedule take discipline too? It seems like it should be easy, but it's not. Hey, Jocelyn, welcome to the club. All right, my schedule is right there on a whiteboard. I'm looking to my left, big wall right there. My schedule is right there. I don't know if I followed it since the day I wrote it. Okay, but what I do have is some important things that I know I want to get to every day. And so my effort is really trying to get to those things. And if I don't, it's okay because I've got tomorrow. You can reset and go again. Don't be hard on yourself for not following and having that discipline, but know that it takes discipline to get there. And you need to practice that discipline every single day and maybe be a little bit better each day. Okay? Because, this goes right along the lines of being an entrepreneur. Being disciplined is hard, just like running a business, but it all comes together. I'm sure you've heard some of the other influencers out there like Rob Bailey. Rob Bailey talks a lot about discipline. Okay. And I spent some time with him. And when you look at successful entrepreneurs, that's what oftentimes makes the difference is their level of discipline and commitment. But, at the same time, it's hard, especially when you've got a family and kids and all the things, right? And that's where I'm not saying I like to give myself a break, but what I look at is my values. Even though I'm losing some discipline over here, am I living and running my day based on my values? Right now, my board over here might have a dollar amount that I want to achieve every month, and maybe I don't hit that. I'm not going to beat myself up because I know I'm living my values. And sometimes what that means is, like last night, I got home from this trip. I had a ton of work I could have been doing, even on a Sunday, but I just said, you know what? My values are, I've been gone. I want to spend time with my kids. Let's go to dinner. Let's play some games together. Okay. And I could be hard on myself for saying, I didn't have the discipline to follow through on my whiteboard over here, but I nailed it on my values. So I'd encourage you to look at your values and then look for ways that you can hold yourself accountable a little bit each day to get close to that level of discipline that you have for yourself. Okay. Rod, go ahead.
I want to weigh in on this one too. Jocelyn, and you're not alone. I want to first tell you that. I'll tell you what I might help you as well. Something that I've used that works for me is on my calendar, I go through and I block out that space that I know I've got this meeting, that meeting, this meeting, throughout the month. I've got a board meeting here. I've got this meeting I want to attend. So all the things that have to be done are booked first. And then the rest, and when you do that, it's like, okay, those are my commitments. Now, how can I work around those commitments? Because I know if I've got to go to a board meeting, I've got to get myself prepped first. I've got to get myself dressed for the meeting and all that. So I put a different hat on for that, right? I've got to be in a different mindset. That's my work mindset. And when I'm in that work mindset, now I can focus on being more productive, right? And part of the hard part about being an entrepreneur working for yourself is you can relax a little bit. You can kick back because you have to find something to be accountable to. And so find those things. Maybe you need a work buddy. Maybe you need somebody else to say, do you need a call every day to say, hey, this is for the next hour, I want you to do this. But find your accountability. And I took a part-time job 2.5 years ago because I was having trouble being accountable to getting up and getting started early in the morning. It would be 11 o'clock. I'd still be in my pajamas, my bathrobe, drinking coffee on the deck. It was great. It was absolutely great, but it's not what I wanted for me. Yeah, I could retire, sit in a lawn chair all day and do nothing, but I didn't want that for me. I needed something to be accountable to. One of the best things was that's about the same time Jim and I started the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate and another business as well. And so I was accountable to those two things. And I took another part-time job to get my butt up in the morning. And it made all the difference. all the difference in the world because it shifted my mindset, it shifted my health, it shifted everything. And then when you've got less time, you can be more productive with the time you have. It sounds crazy, it's a paradox, but if you're budgeting out that time that's out there, when you have less time to deal with in a day, you know you've got to get stuff done in that time that you have. So find ways to pressure yourself into pockets of productivity. Man, that'll preach right there. Find pockets of productivity, okay? But it's not always easy, but it is attainable. And the last thing I want to mention is, Alex, there is no such thing as taking a wrong direction or going the wrong way or investing in something for a long period of time, as long as you're learning from that experience. There is no fail if you're learning from it, ever. It's the takeaways that matter. It's the takeaways that will take you to the next level. So, yeah, sometimes we invest a bunch of time, trouble, money, emotional effort into something, and we decide it's not what we really want to do. But as long as we're learning from that, it's okay. And the second thing is, and this is the caution, and Jim just mentioned it with his business, his import business. Sometimes we want to back out just before it breaks, right? Imagine if Jim would have thrown in the towel and said, that's it, I'm done. COVID's put this business to bed. And where would he be today? So sometimes we have to push through the doldrums. If you ever sail around the world, you get stuck in the doldrums. There's nothing you can do except endure. So be prepared to endure as well.
Yeah.
Hands up, Jim.
Yep. Great response. Alex, 1 second, I'll come to you. I also want to, and I've thrown this out there before, we'll steal this from a page of Andy Frisella. Jocelyn, he's got his 5 core items each day. So if you find you're lacking some discipline to figure out how your whole day looks, write down 5 things that you absolutely have to accomplish that day. It doesn't matter what they are. Once you do those 5 things, then have comfort in knowing you've set out your priorities, you've done them. And if you wind up, crapping off the rest of the day, that's fine. You did your 5 important items. And one of those items could be very, very simple. The point is that you're creating forward momentum on those items. So, Alex, go ahead, unmute and throw it out there, bud.
Yeah, so completely agree with what you were saying, Rod. I think part of it is the overanalysis paralysis that Jim was talking about. I know, with for example, with my position, was out of work for 14 months before I decided, oh shoot, maybe I should be going a completely different direction. So now all of my decisions and all of my thought processes, I'm kind of overanalyzing them because I feel like there's a little bit more of a push to make the correct decision at this point. You can't really afford to have a black or white, yes or no type of answer. It's got to be either it's going to work or it's going to work enough where you're going to make some sort of money that shows that something's coming in and gives you a direction versus, having a chance that you could completely fail, which just kind of winds up throwing a monkey wrench in the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a really good point. And so I'm going to take this back to how bad do you really want something, right? And again, because it's you, I'll use another racing metaphor. When I first started racing, I really wanted to do it, and when I say do it, we all want to be the driver. We want to be the driver and be the team owner and be at the top of the podium. I actually had to be a navigator, which is not the driver, for 2 years to learn how the business operated, okay, what it looked like, what it entailed, how many people did I need, all the functions of being what I really wanted to be, which was the driver. And I had to suck mud for 2 years as the navigator. And yeah, there's some glory to that. It was a good spot. The point of it is sometimes we have to do the first step to get to the second step to get to ultimately where you want to be. And so again, that's a gross example in racing. But when you look at how bad do you really want something, that might mean you got to go get a part-time job doing something to make some money to pay the bills, to allow you at night to build out your business plan or your, your sponsors, or to buy, the item that you need to build this business, right? So the I want it really bad is you're going to go take a shitty job doing something that you have zero interest in, but it's going to pay the bills while you build out that business. And oftentimes we're unwilling to make that type of sacrifice. Okay. There's been several times in my consulting, which has been almost 6 years, that I've looked at, all right, this is a couple slow months. Do I need to stop consulting? Maybe I need to go get a job. You start brushing up the resume because I don't want to stop consulting, but I still want to pay the bills. So sometimes we have to do the hard thing to get where we want to be. And everybody's hard is different. It could be taking a shitty job so that you have the time and the money to go do the thing that you really want to do. Okay. And hopefully you take the shitty job and you learn something. I'm just trying to give you black and whites on that. So, all right. And Alex, again, you had a public comment about your frustration. You're doing something new. How long will it take? Hey, everything new takes more time than you expect. And that should be built into your business plan. And you know what? Hopefully by you being here, we'll speed up that process, because not only do you have myself and Rod and Rachel to connect with, you've got a community. Okay. And that's really where the value comes in, is to leverage that. And this goes for everybody. Leverage the community to speed up the process. It's funny when we say we pay the dummy tax so you don't have to, but there's a lot of reality to that. Okay. So let's help speed up the process. You still have to do the work, but allow us to keep you from making wrong left and right turns based on our own strengths and abilities. So, all right, a few minutes left in the call. Does anybody have any questions? You want to say something? Do you have any successes you want to share? Now's the time. Again, Rachel's actually in DC, hosting her kids on one of those history tours, and family first. That's one of her values. So, all right. Well, look, I had again, going back to the beginning of the call, I had a very productive call with Anthony today. I feel for both him and I like being a resource, and I just want to encourage everybody to try to utilize the resources available here, whatever those look like. Okay. We'll give you the time and energy that you need. We'll get you over the hump, and then you go back to work doing what you're doing. And when you get stuck again, reach back out. Okay. Rachel's got expertise in marketing, and she's an entrepreneur, and Rod and I think we've done just about a little bit of everything. So don't be afraid to reach out. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm appreciative of everybody. Thank you for being here, and look forward to next call. Rod, I think you're on next week.
We'll hit it hard.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye, everybody. You know how to get us.
Good night.